Before we get started, just in case those who are unfamiliar, a little bit about CampersCard. Today, the webinar is presented by CampersCard. This is a new program that will be launching in the spring of 2023. It will be a discount and perks program for RVers that we will be able to connect RVers to campgrounds who are looking for exposure. It'll be a great marketing opportunity as we'll be going out to over 800,000 RVers utilizing the Harvest Host Network. And we're looking forward to bringing on campgrounds this spring. So if you're interested in how that program works, you can learn more by visiting CampersCard.com, and how to list your campground. You'll be some of the first listed this spring when we launch to the public. We'll be going out hopefully late spring, April, May, and then we'll be able to bring everybody to your RV park and get that exposure that you might be looking for. So let's dive in with the hard-hitting things, shall we? Let's go around the horn here and let's just talk about where the industry came from the last year. What did you see in 2022 that worked really well? What do you think were the wins for the camping industry?
Who do you want to go first? I'll go first. All right. Since I spoke, I go first, right, Joel?
Okay.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. So the biggest thing in this last year, 2022, if you remember back in the spring, is when fuel prices shot to the moon. And literally that was the big breath everybody took again in the industry, because people paused. You know, there were cancellations and people changed their plans, and that impacted the year. So there were parks that were outside of that coveted 125-mile radius from a major city center or urban center who felt it. You know, so these destination parks where people travel hundreds of miles to, they lost traffic. And I know parks that lost 25-30% of their traffic last year. Those were the outliers though. Most of the industry, in fact, a lot of parks, they did see their occupancy drop slightly, but their rates were up. Their ancillary income was up. So they actually made more money on the year. And anecdotally speaking to a lot of those owners, they actually were able to take a breath. So when you look at the year before, it was just crazy for them. And they were dealing with a whole bunch of new campers who jumped in the industry, who were escaping the COVID lockdowns and had all the stress and anxiety that brought into their parks. And so this last year was almost like a step back to normalcy. And when we look ahead here, I think that's going to be the continuation of it. We're stepping back into more of a normal camping trend, albeit with a much larger base of campers out in the market.
I think one of the biggest things for the industry too is just the recognition it's getting, and that hasn't just been this past year, but over the last few years, and the amount of funding that's just coming into the industry, not just on like the private side, but also the public side. The state and local governments are investing more in their parks and campgrounds. We've actually seen more local municipalities looking at starting a campground or investing more into their campgrounds that they already own. And then at the national park level, there's obviously been a lot of funding generated into that system as well. So that's been kind of really great for the outdoor industry as well, because a lot of those parks haven't seen investments for a long time. And even if it's a public park, I think, if you get a national park that gets some investments in it, it kind of benefits the parks around it too, I think to some degree, because it attracts more people. So that's been really great to see too. So.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Joel, as an RVer, what do you see?
Yeah. As an RVer, I think I see one positive, one negative. If I had to choose one on either side, the positive is, just like Mark and Ben were saying, RVing is kind of having its day in the spotlight. And a lot of people are now paying attention, and it's a wonderful activity. So I think the lasting effects, I do think things normalize a bit, but that's okay. I think the lasting effect though, is that road travel is back as a really fun way to see the country. And, it had a heyday back in the 50s and 60s, right? The Route 66 days. I think we're seeing another heyday, and I don't think it's going to go back to, to normal. I think people are realizing, like, traveling by RV is a lot of fun. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of freedom. Especially if you're taking a family, it can be a more affordable way these days with super expensive airlines and inflation. And so that kind of gets me to the second point. The only, negative that I'm starting to see in the industry, we are seeing across the board, people are more cost conscious, and they're just starting to think more about their spending. And, I think part of that is a little bit of the fear factor from the news cycles, right? You can't open the newspaper without reading about inflation and things getting expensive. And, but I think part of that is people are getting a little nervous and tightening their purse strings. And so, not the end of the world, but just something to look at.
Yeah.
You know, and carrying on that, Joel, it's interesting because one of the things that happened during COVID is we had all these new folks come into the industry. And before COVID, I mean, Joel, you RV'd beforehand, you know, I RV'd beforehand, before all the COVID stuff. We had a baseline where you could find full hookup RV sites for 30, 35 bucks a night. A lot of these folks that jumped in the industry during COVID, their baseline was airlines, hotels. And so their baseline was a higher dollar amount. And when they came into the industry, RV parks were already at a more premium price. So their base isn't $30, $35. Their base is $40, $45. You're like, oh, I can find a cheap site for $40, $45. So the revenue that you can generate off of an RV site has increased, right? So for park owners and investors, that creates that opportunity where they're willing to invest in that industry. And one of the things that we've seen is part of that cost consciousness is the great thing about an RV is you don't necessarily need to drive 400 miles to enjoy it. You can go 50 miles or whatnot, and that's significantly cheaper. I mean, just getting away from your house for a day or two is a nice opportunity. And so that's where, you know, who knows what this year is going to hold, but I know speaking with parks that are out there, their advanced bookings are on par, if not slightly up over last year right now. But that's I know we're going to go diving into that a little bit further. The key thing for park operators is it's unlike the last 12 years where they all of a sudden need to market their parks to get folks in the door.
Yeah.
I think that leads well into what I was going to ask next is where do we think the industry is evolving? Sounds like maybe the audience is changing a bit, younger people getting out on the road, more technology available to both sides, the RVer and the campground owner. Where do you think it's headed maybe in the next year, the next 5 years?
I think campers are expecting more to some degree when they go camping too. You know, more amenities, especially among the younger groups, they want things to do. So whether that's in the local area or whether at the park itself, it's been kind of exciting to see how parks are expanding their amenity offerings. So instead of just like a park or somewhere to swim, they're adding things there, they're adding activities. I just spoke the other day with a company that's doing fitness equipment. So they said there's a lot of parks adding outdoor fitness equipment. So instead of an indoor gym, they have outside equipment by the park for when their kids are playing and different things like that. So just seeing some of the unique things that park owners are doing to try to attract people and even try to keep them at the park has been very interesting. So.
Yeah, you know, and the flexibility of the industry is what's important too, right? So you can go, you think about the Margaritaville resorts that are opening up down in the southeastern US. I mean, those folks, along with like Sun Outdoor Resorts and a few of these major investors who are building multi-million-dollar resorts with high-end amenities, where you can go camping there for $75, $125 a night and have, you know, really nice amenities for those parks. And some people, that's great for them and they love that. But then on the flip side, you can still go Forest Service camping for 15 bucks a night and be in the forest and camp, you know, or Harvest Host, right? You can go to Harvest Host locations and those same type of, it's not the same type. But what's cool about our industry is there's a wide variety of experiences that are available to people who want to go travel. And Joel kind of hit on it. You know, if you remember last week, the air traffic system went down, and the week before that, Southwest had a week of delays. I mean, this is going to sound kind of mean, especially if you fly a lot. I'm thinking, man, that's great for our industry because everybody's going, I ain't going to fly now. I'm going to drive. And then they go to the next question. Well, when we drive, where are we going to use the restroom? What are we going to do for food? And then all of a sudden a Class B RV or a small travel trailer comes to mind because I can stick that behind my car, tow it, maybe stay in a hotel, maybe camp, whatever. But I think that dynamic doesn't go away. It just starts building upon itself as these options come available. Joel knows, I'm going to give him credit here. I view Harvest Host as one of those services that adds on to and competes against a Walmart. The last thing we want is people who are RVing staying in truck stops and Walmarts. We want them staying in places that they're going to have good experiences, that they go home and share, hey, this was really cool experience. Same thing with RV parks and RV resorts. Those experiences, there's a gentleman in the industry who talks about it, experiential travel, right? So creating the experiences that people want to go enjoy themselves, and then we'll share with others that they had that experience. I think this is the year that that actually comes to fruition, where you see that. And to define what it looks like, you can't do that, right? So some people are like, well, do I need to build a resort? Maybe. You can probably build a basic park as long as you provide an experience that your guests expect when they go there, then you're hitting it on the head.
And I think
Yeah.
the variety is great too, because sometimes you may want to stay in a park like a Margaritaville, and then other times you may be in an area where you don't want to stay in a park like a Margaritaville, and you want that, the U.S. Forest Service experience. So the variety is great too, just for full-time RVers and regular RVers, because then it doesn't get stale. It's not the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Joel mentioned it, like the 50s and 60s in travel. Even if you look at this, so the last time that our country was in a similar economic situation was the 70s. And the 70s was actually the last time that there was a major push to the outdoors. And you can see that if you go back, I'm a car guy. So if you go back and you look at the vehicles that were released, especially the trucks, like Chevy and Ford had trucks they sold on the lot where the dealer would install a camper on it. So that you would buy like a C20 with a camper on the truck already, and then you would go camping. You see that now. Look at the Ford Bronco and these different vehicles that are coming out now. They're outdoor oriented, they're rugged, they're designed for going out and adventuring. So that's speaking to our country and who people are right now, is they're outdoor oriented. They want to go adventure, whether they adventure to the blacktop or the dirt top, they want to go out and have their adventure, whatever that may be.
Yep. One interesting thing that's very different about the 70s and today, in the 70s, there was rampant inflation, gas prices were out of control, there were lines at the gas pumps, we were out of gasoline. The difference is, in the 70s, the US was not a net exporter of oil, right? And then we figured out fracking technology and horizontal drilling. We now have the ability to produce we're the largest producer of oil in the world. And so at a certain price point, fracking becomes profitable again, they turn these things back on. That is to say that I don't see, and I don't make a lot of predictions, but I will make this one. I don't see a world in which gas prices get out of control. I think that we found the upper end of gas prices last year, around $5 a gallon. And that's the upper end, right? But you go to Europe, gas is $9 a gallon, right? It's a whole nother world of pricing. And I think that gas, to me, like, it goes up, it goes down, it normalizes, it goes down. I think that's what we're going to see this year. Some dropping prices. Maybe if there's crazy shortages, it goes back up to $5. But it never becomes completely out of control. I think that's nice, because on the flip side, I don't know the last time you looked at a plane ticket. I think the prices are out of control. and especially if you have a family that you're trying to fly with, it's outrageous. And so, we as a family now have basically broadened the radius that will RV instead of flying, right? And it used to be, oh, okay, if it's like, a 4-hour trip, maybe we'll look into, what. Now I'm like, hey, if it's an 11-hour drive, I'll do it, because that's 2 days. We'll stop somewhere nice on the way. I know we have control over, the prices that we're going to pay, and the schedule, by the way, because a lot of flights are getting canceled. So yeah, I think there's more certainty to road travel. And so that's a prediction I'll make this year. I think things on the pricing side are going to be better and more normal.
Yeah.
Well, and to add to that, the other difference between now and the 70s is that vehicles are more reliable. If we think about it, that 1971 Chevy truck, you had to know how to replace an alternator and set the points on the distributor and stuff like that. Modern vehicles, you turn them on and you go. You don't see cars broken down along the side of the road. Maybe it's a flat tire, but that's kind of the maximum of it. So then if you look at RVs too, same thing. RVs are more reliable, or at least you're able to upgrade them to make them more reliable. Usually the trailer is the biggest issue, is the tires. So if you bought an RV, replace your tires. Just a little insider there. I've learned through experience with that one. But they're more reliable. They're able to get you there. To your point, Joel, you can plan that 11-hour trip. You would likely spend 11 hours when you include driving to the airport, going through security, waiting, getting delayed, getting off, and all that type of stuff. And you arrive with your own bed, your own food, and a completely different experience of this country. I actually did that this last fall, attending a bunch of trade shows on the East Coast. Our family took the SUV, we towed a small trailer, and we stayed in an Airbnb. We stayed in a hotel, but the rest of the time we camped on that journey. And it was Awesome. Just an amazing experience. So I think more people will look at that as an option, and they currently are looking at it as an option and doing it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the final piece I think that connects directly to that is a lot of units were sold in the last couple of years. And I've always said this, like an RV is not like a set of golf clubs that you maybe bought on a whim and can just throw in the closet, right? You're going to use it, especially if you're trying to save money and the economy is a little uncertain. You're going to swap hotel nights for RV nights. And so I think we're going to continue to see a good amount of RV nights on the road. I don't think that all of a sudden, like, because I have friends ask all the time, like, oh, the economy's, tightening. Are you scared in the RV world? And I'm like, look, maybe if I was a high-end manufacturer, these things go through peaks and valleys, but certainly not as a campground, not as a provider, because RV nights are going to remain at all-time highs.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and they're already seeing that data. It's the other interesting fact is when you look at a campground, because its price point is so much lower, and if they already have that depreciating asset sitting in their garage, why not spend the extra gas and go stay in the camper to use the thing? The other thing is the peer-to-peer RV rental platforms. I won't speak for them. I know anecdotally they're doing good. They're seeing advanced rentals good. Like, you would think if people aren't traveling, they wouldn't be renting RVs because it's an extra expense. Depending on how long they're camping for, it could be more expensive than even staying in a hotel and driving, but they have the comfort of a bed, their own food in that space. And those folks seem to be doing well. And that creates that outlet for somebody who has an RV to even turn it into a cash generating opportunity for them where they can rent it out a few nights during the summer. It's a different world. This is actually a great topic because I was thinking about it deeper this morning. When you look at, like, there's a lot of news right now. Joel probably, being on tech side, there's a lot of tech layoffs going on right now. And depending upon the outlet you read, there's a lot of doom and gloom around that. Like, once jobs go, they go. But it's different now because if you lose your job, and I think anybody watching this could kind of nod their head and agree. If you lost your job today, that in a week you could probably replace your income either working for another company or doing your own thing. There's the ability to spin up income really rapidly with all the gig opportunities that are out there, the freelancer opportunities that are out there. We live in a different world today where people are more educated about how they can make money and also how they go about spending that money when they go to do it.
Plus, just the stress factor. Like what Joel said earlier, we're getting bombarded all the time with gas, inflation. It's kind of I don't like to be negative, but it's kind of a dark world to some degree, the economic front. And I think KOA just said recently, 86% of people are looking to get out and go RVing because it's a great stress reliever. And so, when you have that RV in your driveway, and you're stressed out and you want to get away, it's very easy just to hop in the RV. We're going to go to a campground for a week. And now with all the remote working options that people have, you can stay at the campground and work. So, but it's a more relaxing environment and, you're probably not going to do a full 8 hours at a campground. So.
I think we've all touched briefly on the technology piece, but I really think that's a big part of where the industry is going as well, especially all three of our companies here are digital and tech-based. What do you think a campground owner needs to invest in this year? And also on the flip side, where should an RVer be looking? We have a range of audience, a range of ages. Some are still not in that digital space and want to grow there. Where would you suggest starting?
Joel, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I mean, look, to do a quick shameless plug for CampersCard, the idea here is there are so many great campgrounds. As RVers, and even as owner of Harvest Hosts, I spend the vast majority of my nights every year, 30 plus, usually more like 90, in campgrounds, in traditional campgrounds. And that's how it goes as an RVer. And we also obviously sprinkle in boondocking, but for the most part, we're doing campgrounds. And I think that people are going to continue they're going to be looking for deals this year. And so this is where CampersCard comes in. If you have a campground and you are looking for more traffic, offer some sort of discount. It makes people feel good, especially at a time that Ben mentioned, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the media. People are looking for ways to save money. So if you can offer a discount, that's great. And Mark pointed out, there are campgrounds everywhere, right? Thousands of them, like 12,000 private. Some are on major thoroughfares. Perhaps they don't need to join CampersCard because they have plenty of traffic. But there are a lot of off the major highway campgrounds that I love. They're beautiful. And our Harvest Host members are used to driving off the beaten path. And typically they're going to campgrounds before or after. And so it's our 800,000 RVers that we're trying to connect with those types of campgrounds. So that, technologically, it's really easy. You just join CampersCard for free. Doesn't cost anything. I think that would be, and again, shameless plug, but I really do think that'll be valuable for RVers and campgrounds.
Yeah. And following on that, I alluded to it before. This will be the first time in 12 years that RV park and campground owners actually have to market their parks. So if you look at the last 12 years, we've been on this run up where the reality is if you opened a park, put a sign up, run some Facebook ads, people are coming in your doors. That's going to change as we go forward. And it's already changing right now. You're getting folks that are, narrowing down the radius that they're willing to travel. So you now as a park owner need to think about their attention span. Obviously we've got TikTok, and I've been hitting on this one a little bit more recently. TikTok and these YouTube shorts and Facebook shorts, the attention span is shrinking really fast on the people that are online. That you got 5 seconds. And so when you look at attention of the potential campers that are going to stay at your park, you need to ask, what are they looking for? And the number one thing they're looking for that they're not getting is information. And you say, well, I've got all sorts of photos and I've got reviews and I've got text. All those things require the time to read and actually go fumbling through your photographs. Remember, their favorite mode of content right now is 5-second videos, right? So they want to see information in a way that they do it. So that was, shameless plug here. That's why we launched these campground virtual tours. It allows people to hit play and drive through a campground, get the information they need. Are the roads wide? Or where the site's at? And click on them and do that. So our entire business, and I've been working on this, Joel, I've talked to you for years on what we've been building here. The whole purpose is that information piece. And for park owners, my encouragement to you is to grab your mobile phone right now, if you have the opportunity, if you're not listening to this on your mobile phone, if you're listening on a desktop, and open up your website on your mobile phone. 75% of your visitors are on a mobile phone looking at your website. Can you, in 5 seconds, completely understand what your park's about on your phone? If the answer is no, fix that first. That's going to be key to helping you get more guests in your park. And then beyond that, as you look ahead over this year and ahead, you need to become a marketer of your park. And you do that through the way you provide your experience, so giving people a really good experience, communicating that to other people, and getting those guests to also communicate to that. CampersCard, I love it because the traditional way prior to these last 12 years that you would market through, some of those other entities, that's no longer the thing. There's a new audience of folks out there. So you want to get their attention, look at ways to get their attention, and that's how you'll get folks into your park.
Yeah. I think one of the things campground owners will continue to invest into is just automation, kind of like making their lives easier, because we've all seen the employee issues. And I know when I talk to park owners, there's still a lot of employee issues in the outdoor hospitality industry. So a lot of them are looking at those reservation property management systems that help them streamline processes, but maybe even taking it a step further and finding ways to streamline other things at the campground, or make it to where campers can do some of their own things. I know campground owners get a little wary when you say stuff like that. They don't like giving up control, but just finding ways to maybe streamline things so that not everything is on the shoulders of the park owners. I know there's a lot of parks out there that are, it's 2 people running them. And, when you've got 100 sites on a busy weekend, that's a ton of work. So I think that's something that maybe campground owners will want to keep looking at as time goes on. So I don't have anything to shamelessly plug. So
hey, dude, Woodall's Campground Management. You can read about all the stuff that's going on in the industry.
Yeah, there you go. There's a plug.
Woodall's right here. Shamelessly plug.
What I was going to say though, Ben, on the 2-person running a 100-site park, there's also now a trend for people taking land and having 5, 10, 15 sites on it. And that becomes a different beast altogether, because you're definitely not big enough to hire somebody. So you're doing it yourself. And so automating a lot of the processes that are more manual becomes key. So there's just technology wise, there's technology out there where you can automatically meter read your electric usage of a site and directly bill the person their exact usage. And so you might say, well, what does that mean? I don't have long-term guests, I only have overnight guests. Well, there's an entire pricing model where you charge somebody a flat rate for a site plus their electricity. If you look at an RV park's, usually their expense line, their number one expense underneath employees is electricity usually. So if you're able to charge that back and remove that as an expense line from your bottom line, number one, you're going to make more money. Number two, you're going to increase the value of your property. And number three, you're going to make your life a heck of a lot easier, especially as electricity rates kind of go up. Most of the country hasn't benefited from, I'm in Wyoming. Wyoming rates have gone down. Everybody else, unless you own a park in Wyoming, you've seen the rates go up. And most likely they're going to continue to rise, hopefully not like they have been this last year, but you're going to see those rates go up. If you can automatically read those meters and charge people that billing, that's something to look at. And you're seeing that right now. So there's RV Self Park, and there's a few other investment groups who have built these fully automated RV parks, meaning they have nobody on staff. So you check in on an app, you get a gate code, the utilities turn on, you plug in. There's these different models being tested in our industry. And so far, anecdotally, they've all been relatively successful. And that's going to the whole fact that there's different folks that want different experiences. And so there's this really wide opportunity for you as an operator to create those opportunities to make more money.
I think what sets you up nicely for the electric cars, because the stat today was 10% of sales last year were electric cars. The infrastructure of the US right now couldn't actually handle, if everyone went to electric vehicles, there'd be a problem. But parks are set up nicely. Like I hear friends say, like, I tried driving this long distance, there weren't any charging stations. I'm like, there's 26,000 parks. They all have charging stations, right? But they're not set up yet to do it. But to Mark's point, if they put in pedestals that can monitor usage and charge for it, that's a whole nother line of business for an RV park. And eventually it's for people that are now towing electric vehicles, or maybe one day in the short future, pulling with electric vehicles. But at a minimum, you could have people coming off the highway just to refill their tank.
Yeah, definitely. Winnebago just introduced their second concept vehicle at the Tampa show today. So, the electric RVs are coming. It depends on the campground, how much you want to invest in the EVs. I think Mark has spoken on this before too. You don't need to run out and get all 200 sites set up for EVs necessarily, but just based on demand, and what you're seeing. So I know in my area, we don't see a lot of electric vehicles, so probably wouldn't do 200 campsites set up for EVs yet. So.
Yeah, and parks are getting them now. They're getting people towing Teslas in on trailers or whatnot. And the other thing, the big thing right now are electric bikes. So a lot of RVers travel around with electric bikes, and their units are electric powered. So they're running, a lot of full-timers run residential refrigerators inside their RVs. And so their electricity draws are significantly higher. I was consulting with a park yesterday. He's like, "Oh, this park that we're acquiring, they charge $850 a month." And I said, "Do they also charge electric?" And he's like, "Well, no." I said, "Well, that means that they're actually charging $600, because you could probably guess they're probably paying about $250 in electricity for their gas." And so that's a low hanging fruit for park owners, is that electricity usage. On the flip side, it's understanding the market that you're in too. So why are people coming to your park? Right? Why are they just traveling through? Are they coming there to vacation? So really understanding who your guests are and then serving them. That's the big one right there. Our industry, honestly, as a whole, did really well during COVID. We've had other boom times where a lot of people jumped into RVing and then they sold the RVs and left because they didn't have a good experience. Joel, you know this, Ben, you know this, I've heard it on our end. The people who bought RVs over the last 2-3 years loved it, and they still have their RV. It's not on the market. They had a good experience. So park owners as a whole did a really good job with that. So it'll be interesting to see where things go. The other thing is private parks are now competing a little bit against public agencies. So we're starting to see, so for example, a good example is Fishing Bridge RV Park in Yellowstone National Park. If you haven't been to that location recently, it used to be a pretty crappy RV park inside the national park. It was really tight and dirty. They rebuilt the entire area in the back. It looks like a fancy RV resort, concrete pads and everything else, but it's inside a national park. You can't really compete with that, right? So you'll start to see this. And there's several arguments or conversations that can happen around that. If you're a private RV park owner, you hate public parks because they have pricing power over you. You can't charge as little as they can. But there's been a switch all of a sudden over the last few years where the public agencies recognize, because of the headache of all the new campers, that wait a second, we can make this a profit center. So they're starting to raise the rates. You're seeing this on state parks and so forth right now, where they're raising the rates and becoming more competitive with private parks. I don't, some folks, if they're right next to a national park, they're going to be flaming me for that one, but it's the reality of the market is that's what you're dealing with.
And you're also seeing a lot more talk about the private-public partnerships again, like West Virginia has completely passed a law last year where they're allowed to bring in private investment for their state parks. So that's going to be interesting too, because now you've got a situation in West Virginia where you're going to have this private company with their own money upgrading, investing in this public park. And it's going to be interesting to see how far they take that, what type of amenities, upgrades and stuff they do with these parks. So, and then you've got other companies that are doing partnerships with state park systems too, like on the glamping side with glamping tents and different things. So it's definitely putting some pressure on the private parks in those areas to some degree. So.
Yeah, there's actually a campground out in Tennessee called Skull Island. So like a Skull Island. It was a Corps of Engineers campground located on an island out in a lake there in Tennessee. It had been shut down for years, and a public-private partnership was created where Vista Recreation went in and they basically invested their own money to improve that property and built an RV park on that property there. And it's actually a good story. It's not really a negative story because there's a whole bunch of campgrounds in the area already. It's taking this parcel that had been closed to the public, reopening it, making it more accessible, and actually drawing tourists into that area. So it's a good example. You can only have so many campsites within these public parks. In the end, people want to go visit them. And where a private park can compete better against a public agency is on the amenities, the features, and that customer service experience can greatly be improved. You can run into some good camp hosts, but as somebody who's camped in both public and private parks, you never know what you're going to get going into a public park. You don't know if you parked right or you got it right firewood. Who knows what's going to happen there? So that's where a private park can really beat out the public parks, is a really reliable customer service level.
Yeah. And just one comment about the electricity. It's not just EVs is why you want to meter your electricity. It's the rising costs. And then horror stories like Amir Harpaz has a story about somebody doing Bitmine coining at one of his resorts.
I've always wondered if anyone's done that.
The guy had literally
Yes.
had tons of whatever they do bit mining with, and it was just soaking up electricity. Amir said, I forget how much he said, but it was hundreds of dollars a day in electricity. Wow. So. Oh.
Yeah. And he had those automated meters, and that's how he caught it. He got a call from his guy and said, hey, there's something going on here. It was like $150 in one day in electricity at this site. Go check it out. And that's how he found out the guy was mining Bitcoin at that site.
Yep. So it's not just because of EVs are coming down the road. It's just because costs are rising and you want to recoup the cost. So.
Really interesting. I'd love to switch over and think about putting ourselves in the shoes of an RVer. Mark and Joel, you've been an RVer, you actively are. We've talked about many different ways that campground owners can improve or what to invest in this year, but just like personally, if you think about it, what would you as an RVer say is needed right now?
Dude, so I just had this whole rant after that trip I mentioned back east. My biggest complaint, because now I've experienced it and it was irritating. Number one, if you're smart, you don't have a season. Wait, what? If you're in New York State, you don't shut down in October. There are people driving through with RVs who would fill up at a spigot and pay you $30 a night just to plug in electric and camp. That's part of this discussion, that we talked about. People have changed their travel plans. So number one. Number two, if I cannot get to your website on a mobile phone while driving and immediately book that site tonight, I'm going to the next campground. So online bookings and the ability to book a site all the way up to the point where I arrive on site, you're missing out. I experienced that at actually a state park where went to the state park website. It showed a site available. I showed up and it had a whole bunch of sites available. So why would I just book a site when I can actually drive in and see those 5 sites and pick the one we want? So because they didn't have a virtual tour yet.
I was going to say, just pull up campground
They need a
views.
virtual tour, so they didn't. Anyway, so we pull in the site, we hook up, and then I go back to the app to book the site that we're in, it would not work. It wouldn't allow me to book it because I'd passed their 6 p.m. deadline to book a site that would have sat empty that night. So I had to go pay the next morning. But anyways, point being, as a park owner, campers are different now. I'm different. I'm going to arrive at your park, not at 3 p.m. like the old school campers. I'm arriving at 6 p.m. because I did a bunch of stuff on the way there. And I'm viewing you as an alternative to a hotel. I'm plugging in my RV so I can cook, sleep, and then we leave in the morning. So if you have a park that's near a roadway or drawing in travelers, think about your booking process and your onboarding process. Now, an objection to that, some park owners say, well, I need to vet people, number one, and I need to guide them to their site, number two. You can automate your vetting process, and then your guidance to the site, I would encourage you to leave some sites up near the front that are easy to pull into, make sure they're well lit so people can get into it, and then go for there. So those are the two big things. Number one, you don't have a season. You know, if you can keep your park open year round, obviously reduce amenities. You don't need to have staff there, but if you can do that, number one. And then number two, make it super easy for somebody to book on the fly, on the road. Imagine that person there. We had this experience. We rode we were out at Ocracoke Island in North Carolina. We camped out there. We rode the ferry back to the mainland, and then we're heading down the coast of North Carolina, heading towards Florida. The ferry got in after dark because there was the time change. So it was 6 p.m. We didn't have a booking. Now it's dark, and I'm like, oh, great. Where are we going to camp at? And every campground around there did not have online bookings. They had a phone number, and I called the phone number. Nobody answers. We ended up staying in a hotel. That was the only night we stayed in a hotel because I could book a hotel and pull in and camp. So I would, or camp, stay in a hotel, but there you go.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with that. We actually use KOA a lot for the reason that I know everyone is online bookable and they already have my profile, and it's really simple because I think there's nothing worse as an RVer. A lot of times you're making decisions while you're traveling, right? You're on the road, you're realizing, okay, like we can make another couple hours. Let's see what's out there. Try to make a phone call to tell them not only that you want to come, but your address, your credit card number. Like, it is too much. It's too long of a phone call. Calls drop. It's stressful. So we also almost entirely look for online booking. As a first, like worst case, we'll pick up a phone, but that's never the priority. I also think that campgrounds can start taking more playbook from the hotel industry. And one example is early check-in, late checkout. And this is something we're actually suggesting for our CampersCard program, is that little things like that mean a lot to travelers, right? When I go to a hotel and they let me check in early, or they give me a late checkout, and a lot of times, by the way, they'll charge for it. But it's still like, I feel good because I'm in control, right? And so as an RVer, I think all of us, we work from the road a lot. And so in the morning, I've got phone calls, and then I've got to get breakfast, and then I've got to get my daughter ready. And like, we're always running late, right? Always running late. And so I feel guilty because campgrounds they're like very strict. 11 a.m. you're out, right? And the next RV doesn't come till 3. And I don't know, they're going to sweep the site, right? It's just, there's not a lot of reason for that buffer, or at least not such a big buffer. So experiment with even charging for a late checkout, because I would gladly pay $10, $20 to then guilt-free, not feel stressed out that I'm late, because you feel bad. Like, I mean, you feel bad. And by the way, some park owners will call you, right? They're like, hey, you're supposed to have been checked out. Like, I know I'm going, right? So, hey, I'll pay 10, $20 to stay late, guilt-free. Yeah, something to think about.
But no, I completely agree with that, because it's so stressful, especially, have you ever had those afternoon meetings where the check-in's at 3, you're like, but I got to get there at 2:15 to get set up, get on the call. And you're like, you go to the office to check in, and you're just waiting for them to say, no, your site's not available. And you're worried about that. And then they're like, oh, great, welcome. You can go on and it's like, wait, why is checking at 3 then? If I'm fine pulling in at 2. Yes, I been there, done that.
Yeah, I mean, plans change. I mean, with the hotels, when I go to conferences, sometimes I get in earlier than anticipated, and it is great to have that early check-in. So just that flexibility is very important. So.
And even making them a la carte options. I think that
a
lot of people wouldn't mind just having that control factor, because it's the anxiety that Mark's describing of not knowing if they're going to let you in, and you've got a phone call. And by the way, all the stats show that more and more people are working from the road. That's one of the reasons the industry is booming, is that people, because of COVID, are able to work remotely. So there's just a new world of having to take phone calls, and trying to get into a site is important.
And that goes back to the whole point is information. So when you think about our industry, the folks that are going to gravitate more to RVing and outdoors, either they grew up with it, so they knew it, or if they're jumping into it new, they're going to be a little bit more adventurous because they're willing to take that risk. And when you look at our industry, it is a risk, right? I'm buying this big, expensive RV or renting it, right, to go out on the road. The next question is, where do I stay? And all of the different decisions that go into the place you're going to stay, those are actually significant decisions. Number one, can I fit? Like, right? Will I fit, or will I run into a tree or something? That's a big one. When I get to the site, will I be able to hook up and have the utilities I want? Will I be able to have sewer, water, or whatever? And if I don't have those things, will I make it through the night? Like if I don't have sewer, will my toilet overflow inside the RV, right?
Yep.
It seems funny on the surface, but it's a real worry, especially for people who don't get into the industry. And those are the things, if you talk to somebody who's never been RVing, ask them why. Number one reason is I have to deal with my sewage stuff. That's probably the number one reason why they don't want to do it. The number two is I don't even know where I'm going to go at all. And so, that's where that information piece comes in. And as property owners, if you can lower those barriers to why and make them, oh, okay, I can do it, that's going to make all the difference. And I'll share a story. So we're doing that traveling down the East Coast, and we went to stay at this county park, and I did the same thing, Joe. I went onto their app. They had a nice app, and it showed 170 sites available that night. I don't need to make a reservation. I'll just show up and go first come, first serve, pick the best site. Well, what their app didn't show is that they were doing a Christmas light thing in there, and none of their sites were open. They were all shut down because they had Christmas lights. They arrived after dark. So here we are in the campground that I can't stay in. What do we do next? And so I'm trying to call around.
I would enjoy the Christmas lights.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't let us. No, it wasn't. It didn't start till the next night. That was the frustrating thing. I'm like, I'll plug in, we'll be gone. Anyway, side story, right? So then I'm on the phone, and then I'm like, wait a second, I think there's some virtual tours in this area. So I pulled up our website, and I found a nearby campground, and I used the virtual tour. And I'd never been to this campground before. One of our videographers captured it. I'd never been into it before. I toured through. I set my date for that night, and the icons changed green to red, sites that are available. And I found this site. It was site B17. And I toured it. So I saw the route getting them there, and I booked it because recreation.gov lets you book it overnight. We pulled into that campground about 9:30 at night, pitch black, no moon. I'd never been to this campground before, except I've been to it virtually. I'd actually toured it on the virtual tour. I cruised right in to the campsite that we wanted, backed right into it, hooked up to the electricity, and we camped there overnight. And when I woke up in the morning and I looked at the road I came in daylight, I was like, dang, that's just a testament to providing near perfect information to somebody who's going to go camping. And that's the key. So when you're looking at how do I get folks into my park this next year, information is the key, and you need a hook to get them to want to look. And that's where, things like CampersCard come into play.
Hook to get them to look.
I like it. Yeah, that's
a
good.
good
That's a
motto.
good pitch.
That's awesome.
That's copyrighted, so nobody can use that in their marketing. So
Well, I have one final question for you. I do want to open it up to the panelists or the attendees as well. So if you have any questions, I see a couple coming in our Q&A section. Go ahead and leave those questions, and I'll give them to our panelists after this. But to wrap up from me, I just want to know, what are the strengths that we should lean into this year for the RV and campground park owners?
I think, we just need to keep reminding ourselves that, we are a customer service industry, and we're about creating great experiences for the camping guests. So just continuing to find ways to do that and make them satisfied and create those memories. It will really go a long way to keeping the industry in the public's focus. And just, it's good. Like Mark had a great session at the Campground Owners Expo, where park owners were talking about some of the negative experiences they've had with campers. And then there were some really great heartwarming stories of things they've done for campers and things that have happened to campers at their parks. So it was just great to hear all of that. And people are trying to escape stress. They're looking for unique experiences, and just being able to provide that is something that park owners just need to stay focused on, especially when they're in June, July, when it's really busy and they don't have enough employees and people are driving their RVs into trees and different things. Just keep your focus on the positive. So.
You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with some friends here this last week, and I'd call them more like they've never camped. They've never RV'd. I think they visited us once when we were RVing. That was it. They've never done it before. And the conversation we were having this week is they went away on a vacation, you know, stayed in a hotel for a weekend, and they came back and they said, you know what? We don't like the stuff we used to like. Like, we don't want to go to the movies. We don't want to go to the clubs. You know, we're actually thinking about going hiking and camping, like doing something different.
Yeah.
That was unprompted. I was actually, my jaw hit the ground because I couldn't picture them actually camping, but I was like, wow, that's really cool. But point being is, over the last 2 years, people had an opportunity to reflect on who they are, who their family is, and what their priorities are. And a large, I mean, you can see this in the data. There's a lot of data on just, you know, suicides and people really going through significant traumatic experiences as a result of all the COVID stuff. One of the, if it's a positive, we can swing out of that, is that our industry creates the opportunity for folks to reconnect with themselves, their friends, their family, and that there's data out there. The outdoors is a rejuvenating experience. And so we offer that as an industry. So lean on that opportunity for people to reconnect with themselves, to get away from the stress, and to connect with the nature.
And then, you know, the only thing I'd add, as an RVer, and now especially we have a young daughter, we obviously love parks with playgrounds, and a lot of parks have playgrounds. That's wonderful. We don't expect it necessarily. Like, if I go to a park and there's no amenities, and if it's a nice clean park, it's great. The only thing that really, two things that stand out to us that make me not want to go back to a park. One, Ben hit on, it's the vibe. And so when you check in, usually it's a really warm, pleasant experience, and we love that, right? We're all RVers, we're having a great time. Every once in a while you have just a negative vibe, and that's no fun. And it's enough to make me not want to go back. Now, look, some people are tough customers, and I get it. It's not always easy to keep a smile on your face. But I think the second thing is, if you're going to have amenities, keep them up, like keep them in good shape. And so if you're going to have a playground, keep it in good shape, or don't have a playground. If you're going to have a putt-putt course, like I've been to some places that have like really run down, messed up putt-putt courses, to the point no one's going to use them, and it looks bad. It just ends up like, it sends this vibe of like, I don't know if I want to be here because this thing, it doesn't seem like it's well run. And I get that they're expensive, but what I would do is get rid of it, right? If I didn't want to upkeep an amenity, I would just remove the amenity, because aesthetics are important. And so having stuff run down is never good, right? Don't have a broken slide, don't have a broken, you know, swing, and don't have a broken putt-putt course. Just get rid of them.
Yeah,
A rundown putt-putt course makes it more challenging, Joel.
No, look,
that's
I
part of the
still play them.
design.
I still
That's
play
the
them,
design. Well, and to Joel's point, there's a way to find out, because one of the hard things for park owners is that you're so deep in the weeds on your park, you can't see it. Like, you don't see that.
Yeah.
Go to your online reviews, drop your ego a little bit, because it's gonna be hard, but go to your online reviews and read them for what they are. Instead of the person's just a jerk, read their response. If they said, you know, the playground's a little bit rough, do what Joel's saying. So that's a way to kind of get away from yourself a little bit. Another tip I share is hire a local photographer, pay him $500 with the singular guidelines. Tell them to come to your park and take pictures of it as it is. You want to see the warts and pimples, and then share those photos with you, because you may see angles. You know, there might be a trash can sit right in front of your office. It's all beat up and ugly, that if you just covered that or moved it, could completely change the ambiance of your park. So little tip there to get outside of that. You know, it's hard when you're inside of your park to see it from the outside.
Yeah, and invite other park owners. If you know park owners in the area that can come look at your park, do that. I know RVIC does that, the National Association of RV Parks and Campgrounds. They have some great 20 groups. State associations have some great groups where they just invite owners and they tour parks, and they can come away with some great stuff, because park owners that have never been to your park are going to notice things that you probably didn't notice too. So.
We had a couple questions come in, and 3 of them all touch on marketing. So I guess if you guys want to maybe talk a little bit more specifically about, are expos good? Where in social media would be good? Google ads, billboards, what around marketing do you feel is good? If you're streamlined, even you're close to a highway, you do the online bookings, you're cleaned up and look good, but where should they be stepping into for marketing?
It goes back to that attention. So where are your potential guests spending their time and putting their attention? So the lowest hanging fruit in advertising right now for an RV park is Google Ads. Because that's where people are doing a Google search for an RV park in or near your city or your major point of destination. So that's the low hanging fruit. But the next thing is, where are people actively looking for parks? So CampersCard, right? There's going to be a lot of people looking for parks there, and that's one spot. Campground Views, people are on there looking for parks. There's other apps out there, All Stays, RV Parky. There's all these different apps out there. List in all of them. That's my advice to every park. Go list in every single app that you can find. And how do I find that list of apps? Well, search for RV parks near your city or name and just go down the Google results and see where all the listings come up, and make sure that you're on those directories too. Go to the Google Play Store or the Apple Play Store or whatever they call it, Apple iOS Store or whatever, and do a search for campground directory, RV park directory, and look at all the brands that come up, and then just make sure that you're on all those brands. You want to be where people are actively looking. That's the easiest marketing, is for people actively looking for you. The next and more difficult marketing to do is to market to people who aren't actively thinking about you or looking for you. And that's where you get into Facebook posts and YouTube and other marketing that's pushing your message out in front of people who may be interested but aren't actively seeking it. So that's some quick tips on how to go about marketing your park.
I noticed April Niles asked if expos are a really great source of marketing. I know, like, the Tampa show is going on right now. There are a ton of state associations down there, campgrounds down there. And, I've been to a bunch of different expos, and it's a great place to get people who maybe are new to camping and they're looking for an RV, because generally these are like RV expos. So you got all these RVs people are buying or looking. And so maybe they're just collecting campground guides or pamphlets or researching campgrounds they might want to stay at. I know down at the Tampa show, there's a ton of our full-time RVers and RVers that are hitting the road. And I think that's just the benefit for being down there too, is, you're just among people who are eager to go RVing and are looking for unique places to stay. So, you just have to look at your park and decide whether that's something you want to invest in. There are services that'll distribute your guides for you and different things like that too. So.
And every RVer has their approach to how they find campgrounds, right? And so some people are using the dirt, some people are using RV Trip Wizard, or a lot of people do that. We, strangely enough, use the Good Sam Trip Planner. And you can create like A to B routes, and shows you all, not just Good Sam clubs, but private campgrounds as well. And it's just a good way to see it on a map. And so, to Mark's point, like, get on all of those lists. And they want you, or they want you on the list, because they're trying to be all inclusive. And so that's the easiest way, is just to get on the apps and the websites that people are already using to search.
And keep your profiles updated. I know that's something that Mark works on with Campground Views, and I imagine they do with the dirt and these other places too. It's not enough just to claim your profile. You've got to put stuff in there besides just your name and where you're located. So, like, plenty of pictures, videos, virtual tours, whatever, so that people know what they're looking at. So
the other low hanging fruit that a lot of parks, well, most parks have missed, is email marketing. So, you have a reservation system, hopefully, and you've got email addresses. It's highly unlikely that you've sent any emails to them other than thank you for your stay when they checked out. Using that email list, it's super. You could, if you're a park that's open today, right now, and you're like, man, we're not really busy, get an email going. Identify where your guests are. If they're within a 50-mile radius, and you're slow this weekend, shoot out an email. Hey, we loved having you stay at our park, and drop a discount on it, right?
Yeah.
Here's
People
20%
love
off for
discounts.
this weekend.
People love it. People love
Yeah.
discounts. I mean, it's like the easiest way, throw out a discount. People are going to come because they appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah. And then you can partner too. So there's other groups. We've been doing it with parks where we have a really large consumer email list. No charge. We'll send out or nominal charge, but we'll send out an email to that list saying, hey, get 2 nights free stay, just enter your email address, and then you can build a bigger email list for that. So there's ways to partner. You could do that within your local chamber with the other campgrounds in your area. That's low hanging fruit. That's data you have in your computer right now, an email list. Start using it.
Yep, totally. And the final plug for CampersCard, we have an email list of 800,000 RVers, and we're taking, campground applications now. When we launch to the public in spring, we're basically just going to email everyone a newsletter and as members and say, here are the parks. And it's free. So it's a free marketing option. But we're lucky because we've spent the last 5 years building this email list. We spent maybe $25 million building this email list, and now we have it. And so that's why we can offer it for free to campgrounds, is that it doesn't cost us any incremental, there's no incremental cost to tell people about the campgrounds. And it's a perfect way to put us together.
Mark, what I guess, what would you tell somebody who just really can't do the marketing or the Google ads or deal with social media? Is there people that they should reach out to?
There's a number of professionals that operate in our industry that know our industry. So, we have a Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, where you drop in there, and maybe Sash can put a link either in the post email or whatever to that Facebook group, but ask around. There's experts that focus on our industry. So there's a whole bunch of people that can handle your Google ads and your digital marketing, but you want somebody who understands our industry doing that, because there's nuances to it, and if you see somebody outside the industry trying it, they always do it inadvertently wrong. So, do it the right way, and that would be hiring experts who are in our industry. There's a number of providers that do that.
I just put the link to the Facebook page in the chat. If anybody's interested, you can click on it from there.
Thank you.
We do have a couple more questions if you're open to them. I don't know if anybody's
good,
on the
yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
All right. Someone did ask Mark, you said, if you have an online booking software, what if you don't? Where should you start? Do you have any recommendations?
Get a booking software.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you start. Get an online booking software. I run into parks that still use pen and paper, and they love it, and it's great. And if that's your business model and you feel like that's the best thing for you, then I guess. But online booking software is just streamlines everything. It's going to make you more profitable. It's going to help you just raise awareness of different areas of your business. And it helps with marketing. I know when we live in Michigan now. When I used to live in Indiana, there was literally a park like 15 miles away from where I lived that I didn't even know it existed. And the reason is because they just did not have online. You couldn't book online. They had zero online presence, and you just don't know it's there unless you drive by it. So just something to think about.
Yeah. And so the next question be, what's the best online reservation system? The answer is, I don't know. It depends on what you want and what you need. So my advice on how to pick the right reservation software is it takes some effort, but what I encourage you to do is demo as many as you can find. And I'll give you a short list here when I finish this answer. So demo as many as you can find. Upon completion of those demos, create your needs and wants list. What do I need? What do I want? And then kind of identify out of your demos which ones have those features, and then make a short list, maybe 3 or 4 that you think you would like to work with, and then re-demo those 3 or 4, having gone through all the other demonstrations before, and then select that one. The worst case scenario for a park is, and if anybody on here, you can raise their hand and agree with this, it's having to switch reservation softwares once you're down the road. Worst experience for RV park owners. Now there's some that can make it easy, but just that process, there's a lot of moving parts that can get dropped and you mess things up. So then the next question is, who's my short list? So who I'd recommend that you demo, and I'm going to miss some names on here, so please don't flame me if you're those other reservation software, but here's a short list for you. CampSpot, Camp Life, ResNexus, Firefly, Campground Commander, see, now I'm dropping it. You've got Rover Pass. There are so many out there right now that you can demo. If they're not on that list, do a Google search for RV park reservation software, and you'll get a whole bunch more on there. Like I said, demo as many as you can, and then make your short list from there.
In our Woodall's, my turn for a plug. In our 2023 Woodall's Campground Business Guide, I believe is on our website. I think we just put it on there today. If not, it will be up there shortly. And there is a spot in that business guide for reservation softwares that list, I think, pretty much every reservation software company in the industry right now, although there seems to be more and more coming on board all the time. So
cool. Yeah, that's a great plug, Ben.
That is a great
not
plug.
signed up for the newsletter, sign up at
Yeah.
woodalls.com.
Yeah, woodallcm.com. You can find the directory. It is live. I just checked. So, yeah.
We have a couple other questions about convenience items or any other amenities, especially for people who might be staying long-term or working there. Someone else also asked about live entertainment or different things that you might be able to do in that space, if anybody wants to speak to that.
So some parks do great job with live entertainment. It just depends on your park. Like, what's your vibe? Like, do you have a lot of people that are there on Friday and Saturday nights? And are they interested in live entertainment? You know, do you want to do live entertainment for kids or adults or for families? And then, you know, you've always got to make sure you have, like, if you're going to have music, you have to have the right licenses in place, because you can't just play music. Even if a band comes in, you have to make sure that you're still protected with licenses and make sure that everything's legal on that end. But I mean, there are some campgrounds that do some awesome job with live entertainment. And a lot of times you can bring in local people that are just eager to have somewhere to play, and it can be pretty cheap too. And it's a great draw for for campers. So just something to think about.
Yeah, and it also goes back to who your guests are, right? So understanding what they're looking for when they come to your park. So if you're a park that's got a lot of oil field workers staying in it, live bands ain't really, they don't care. They're generally going to be at work, sleeping,
Yep.
or gone on the weekends, right? So understanding your worker base too. I know a lot of parks that just focus on workers, they're quiet because they're either sleeping or they're gone. Like that's it. Those are the two things that happen in those parks. If you're a park that's going for the family friendly opportunities, think about what those families want and creating those different opportunities. So a schedule of events. And that's if you're running a family friendly park, that schedule of events is tough. You know, figuring out what you're going to do, what works and what doesn't. It's a hard thing. I don't think there's anybody who's perfected it. It's a lot of trial and error and just kind of gauging a response to it. So, you know, kind of step into it, do a few events, see what the response is, and then build up from there. As Ben said, if you go to live events, do make sure you have proper licensing. And there's a lot of parks that don't realize that. If you're playing music or videos anywhere where the public can see it and you don't have a license to be able to do that, there's actually agencies that can call on you and say, hey, we know that you're playing this music. Here's the demand letter. You pay us this because you used unlicensed video. So that's, if you're not aware of that, that's something to look at.
And that's music that you play in the office. That's for the workers.
Even if it's the radio.
Yeah, you have to have a license. So, and you know, live entertainment too can include movies. That's not really live, I guess. But you know, for playing movies, there's a lot of great campgrounds that do family movie nights, and there's some parks that are even starting to do it around the pool area, so you can swim and watch a movie. So that's something else to think about too.
I wonder if they play Jaws. Is that like the pool one? You play Jaws?
That'd be awesome. Do that around a lake. Just play Jaws on a lake. Yeah.
Well, we've hit on most of the questions here. So is there anything else you guys want to add before we wrap up? I'm really appreciative of your time today.
I saw Bob asked about how do I measure electric usage? There are some companies that do that for you, and you have to, if you just have a regular unmetered pedestal, obviously you have to upgrade to something that you can put a meter on. But then you have companies like Wild Energy that will do it wirelessly, so they'll plug in to I think they have some they work with a couple different reservation providers right now, and so like I think New Book's one of them. So if you have Wild Energy and New Book, then basically it's all seamless and it all goes together. But there are other companies that do electric metering as well. So just looking into different companies.
And then the other thing to, if you have a state association, connect with that state association, because there are state laws that vary based upon what you can actually charge for electric or not. So understanding that before actually stepping into that is important. Some areas you can do whatever you want. Some areas there's very strict rules on what you can and cannot charge for electric metering. So just that caveat on there. Make sure that you know your local laws on it.
Yeah, and then somebody asked about picnic tables, if they're important. And I think they are very important. People love picnic tables. So
yeah.
And trees. I mean, if you can put a tree, it's funny that
yeah,
a little greenery at a campground makes a huge difference. It just feels more like a campground.
people will like fight for their picnic tables. So, long or short-term guests, they will drag them off of other sites. They will do weird things to their picnic tables. So they're definitely important to people. So, and a huge pain to campground owners sometimes. So
Well, thank you to everybody who's got a picnic table.
thanks.
Well, this was fun. You got me all fired up to go RVing.
Yeah.
Ready.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. It's really great to hear from each of you. Each have very different perspectives of the industry, and it's very valuable to hear. So thanks for your time today. And everybody, just so you know, this has been recorded, so we'll send it out afterwards, as well as a follow-up email with some contact information. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Sash. Appreciate it. Ben, Mark, always a
Thanks.
see you.
Good to see you.
Great.